everybody. This is your host, Huge Pop, and the Huge Pop Wrestling Podcast on a late Thursday night. Our guest tonight has appeared on Tampa Bay Rays TV, the Savannah Bananas. He's a trivia host, a public speaker. He wrestles for many indie wrestling promotions around the United States. Please welcome to the Between the Ropes Huge Pop Wrestling Podcast, The Cheese. How you doing, my friend?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming on the show. I appreciate that. And I guess we're gonna start like this. So I usually ask how you got as a fan, but I'm not gonna ask that question right yet. My question is, I want to thank you first of all for coming on the show because in the profession that my wife and I do, we're foster care, like I was talking before we came on, and this is my self care. I get away from reality for an hour and 15 minutes, however long, and it just lets me get out of this stuff and into like a calm space. So I thank you for allowing me to have my self care, and I appreciate you coming on the show. So I don't know. I'm sure as a wrestler, self care is important to you. I can imagine.
Well, self-care in a lot of different ways, is very, very important, especially in the mental health arena. Mental health for years and years and years has been stigmatized for men because you're looked at as weak, and really all genders, you're looked at as weak if you go and ask for help. And I'm glad to know that even as a self-care measure, that is being looked on as something that's not a weakness, but a strength. You're just building yourself back up. And wrestling has always been important in my life, and for many years it's the escape. It's what
Right.
I turn to. Even as a pro wrestler, it's something that I turn to help me forget about the bills that I have to pay, forget about the meetings that I have to take care of in my, business, forget about being up late and all the stuff that stresses you out. Pro wrestling is the love that you can turn to, and it loves you back because it just not only can you dig from the past, but you can look in the present. There's always a lot going on in the past and the present, but there's even more to look forward to in the future.
Yeah. Thank you for that. That's awesome, man. And so my first question to you is, as a kid growing up, were you a fan of wrestling, and what was that like if you were?
Man, I love wrestling growing up, and um it was the best time that I had from a family standpoint. There's, a- as you know, being a emergency foster parent, not everybody grows up with this amazing childhood. And, I was poor as dirt, but we had everything that we needed. And the main thing that we needed was each other. And my maternal grandparents, I called them my nanny and my papa. They were
Yep.
huge wrestling fans. My papa was a World War II veteran, a Purple Heart recipient. After the war, he went back to West Virginia to the coal mines. I mean, this guy was a man's man. He was Papa Cheese,
Yeah.
and he he was such an inspiration to me, and he was such a hero to me whenever I was a kid. If that guy loved pro wrestling, then there's got to be some merits to pro wrestling, right?
Right.
So I would always be getting in trouble because we all lived in the woods on the same kind of 20 acres property that was some family land that's been our family for years and years, and just completely out in the sticks. And what signal we would get the NWA, and we would get WCW, and occasionally we could get a hold of some WWF, WWE stuff.
Right.
And I'm in trouble for sneaking off to my grandparents' house and watching it with them because I wouldn't tell anybody where I was.
Yeah.
And yeah, I would just watch wrestling and from start to finish, and we talk about wrestling for hours and hours, before and after.
Right.
And my papa's favorite was Sting, and I'm appropriately wearing a Sting shirt tonight.
All right.
And so Sting became my favorite, and thus wrestling became my my true love.
Well, see, we have something in common, man. Did you stand in that line for 3 hours at the River City WrestleCon to meet Sting? I did.
I actually had a unique opportunity to the gentleman who was in charge of the meet and greet photography for that is a really good friend of mine. Shout out to Spot Monkey Art and Spot Monkey Photography, and he does a lot for me aside from photography, but he's an excellent photographer, and he was taking the photos for the photo op meet and greet with Sting, and I hopped in and was like, "Hey man, is there anything I can do to help you?" And he's like, "Yeah, of course. I'm like drowning here." And of course, so I helped with the line and everything. And I had wrestled the day before, I think,
Yeah.
or that day already. And so I went from my table to helping him out. Of course, it's Sting, you know. So
Right. Yeah.
I actually got to meet him and talk to him and tell him thank you for the impact that he's had on my life. And that was a really like, gosh, that was such a cool moment. Such a
Yeah.
cool moment.
One of my wife's favorite moments of the WrestleCon is we're sitting by DCCW, the Christian
Yeah.
wrestling promotion,
Yeah.
and I'm talking to somebody, and I'm getting ready to finish up that and go to get in the line, and the guy grabs a hold of my wife because my wife had a camera. He goes, "Follow me," and she walked out the doors, and she looked up, and Sting was like 3 feet away from her, so she's like click 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 click. So it was pretty cool, and so she loved it. And she's not a huge wrestling fan at all, but to do that, she talks about it today still, So I just
River
found
City
it
Wrestling
interesting.
Con is a great one.
Yeah, I just found it interesting that you are not only a wrestler, a business owner. You work with Savannah Bananas, and you're a
Yeah.
dad. So how do you manage all of that and be a dad and be any kind of energy, have energy?
Uh, it all there's a lot of different directions I could go with it. The big thing that I would really boil it down to is passion. I'm passionate about so many different things. For a long time, for a long period of my young adult life, I lived in the service of others in the sense of I wasn't doing anything for me. And so then after I broke out of that shell and became more me than I've ever been in my life, um, I realized I was passionate about a lot of things, and there's a lot of things I needed to do, not just wanted to do, but needed to do. And it was in no particular order that all the things that you listed were things that I found myself needing to do. Um, it's just, yeah, it really just boils down to passion. It is a balancing act. I would say it's not for the faint of heart. If you're easily flustered, or I'm an easygoing person. Like it takes a lot to be very angry. Um, every now and again, like everybody else, I'll have my complain sessions to my close friends, and you get that stuff out of your head, like you talk about mental health and self care and all that. Talk to somebody; it's very important. You get that stuff out, but it is a balancing act. I have my wife and my daughter, and we have a child on the way, and
Wow.
we it's there's a lot of times there's if I'm out late, or if I'm coming back from a show, or coming back from my landscaping business that I have, home improvement business. Really, I do a lot of different things. um it's it is certainly very important to manage your time wisely
Yeah.
and to tread lightly.
Yeah. Well, guys, you mentioned he has a business. I think this is accurate. Farmhand hauling and property maintenance. So TJ Rutherford owner. This is the cheese, his business that he
Oh,
he
thank
runs
you.
it.
That's nice.
So so I would check him out, man. If you're in that area, if you're down in Tampa area, Orlando area, check him out. uh, let's support the guys. He doesn't only wrestle; he's a father. This is like his income as well. So check him out, guys. So I
I
found that I
appreciate
was like,
that.
not a problem, man, not a problem. So now we're gonna get into your wrestling career, and of course, my kids say, "Hey, who you interviewing?" I said, "Well, the guy's name is the Cheese," and so I have three questions from her. Her name is Destiny, and so I'm gonna put this image up. What is your favorite cheese?
Okay, so is Destiny's asking this question, right?
Yes,
Or is this just for your general audience?
Destiny. She answered it.
I'll,
She wrote
I,
down three questions before she went to bed.
Destiny. Uh, as you get older, you know, your mood changes on certain things. Some things that were once your favorite are no longer your favorite. Some things can be revisited and be your favorite again. Um, I'm a mood guy when it comes to food. So whatever I'm feeling like that day is what I'm eating. Lately, we've had a little bit of cooler weather in this region of Florida, which is very surprising for how long it stuck around. Anytime it's lower than the 70s, everybody in Florida wears a jacket.
Yeah.
But because of this cooler weather, I've really been enjoying the smoked Gouda because it tastes really good in warm, like dips and soups and different things. So smoked Gouda is my go-to favorite cheese right now.
All right. Second question is, what's your favorite cheesy meal?
My favorite meal? That is a good question. And it goes along with what we were just talking, what I was talking about with it being a little bit cooler weather here. Um, it's as a meal, it's like you can get it at Panera Bread, but some people just make it a standalone. You can make it yourself, but it's the broccoli cheddar soup in the bread bowl thing. You take that bread and dip it in.
Mm,
It's this cheesy gooey. That's a whole meal. I mean, that fills me up anyway.
awesome. Your least favorite cheese?
Um, I love all cheeses, but I would, if pressed, my least favorite cheese, I would have to say the cheese. I'll call it the cheese that I eat the least is Lindbergher.
Okay.
It's not readily available. A lot of people are in this area eating a lot of Lindbergher cheese.
Right. Not a lot. So she has one last question, and it goes along with your name. Your how'd you come up with the cheese? And I dug and I dug and I dug, and I was like, and I listened to some of the interviews, and I'm like, okay. And I thought this would be appropriate to play. Her question is, why the cheese? So I'm going to play this video, and then you can react to the video, and you can tell us why you chose the cheese to be your character name. Ready?
Yeah.
Well, I'm here to tell you that you're probably going to find out as you go out there that you're not going to amount to jack squat. You're going to end up eating a steady diet of government cheese and living in a van down by the river. Now, young man, what do you want to do with your life?
Actually, Matt, I kind of want to be a writer.
Well, Lottie frickin' da! We got ourselves a writer here. Hey, Dad, I can't see real good. Is that Bill Shakespeare over there? Huh?
Well, actually, Matt, Ellen and I have encouraged Brian in his writing.
Dad, I wish you could just shut.
So I've heard this story, but I want you to share the story against for our fans. Why the cheese?
Okay. I will go way back, and this is one detail that I have left out in the past. So the way, way back origin story is when I would watch wrestling with my grandparents. My nanny would prepare us, me and my papa, government cheese and crackers.
Yep.
So and you can remember, if any of your listeners or anybody who knows what government cheese is, it was looked down upon, and it was in this big tin-full package, and it had a USDA logo on it because it was government commodity cheese. But let me tell you something, it was delicious.
It was.
I loved it. It
Yep.
was. So I think about that from time to time, and I don't really tell that part of it, but I think it's important to tell that, because we were poor, but we were happy. We had what we needed. We had love, we had fun, and we had government cheese. But so that's part of the Wayback Machine. But then moving forward into the future, when I was going through my training, I was trained by and continue to be trained by the great and amazing Jay Lethal, who is by far just one of the greatest humans you could ever meet, and has the most brilliant wrestling mind. Any wrestler, if you have the opportunity to go and talk to him, any fan, if you have the opportunity to go talk to him, because he is limitless in his knowledge of the professional wrestling genre. Suffice it to say, during training, you do what is called a promo, which is essentially what Mr. Matt Foley, aka Chris Farley, just did in that sketch. He was energetic and he gave a message. And so you want to give a charismatic message. And so we had to do that as part of our wrestling training. And I was very excited. I was the most excited about that because I love the characters. And so I cut a promo, essentially like Matt Foley, a motivational speaker. And I told everybody in the room, because I was a bad guy, I was a heel. I told everybody in the room that they smelled like they were on a steady supply of government cheese.
Nice.
And Jay Lethal stopped me and said, "You sound pretty mad about that government cheese." And then he laughed and he enjoyed it. He said, and he started calling me government cheese, and then he eventually shortened it to just cheese. And so I said, I think I have an opportunity here. And from that moment, I became the cheese.
That's awesome, man. I loved it because that is probably one of my favorite episodes of Saturday Night Live. And when
Oh
I
my
seen
God.
that,
Yeah.
when I heard you say that, I was like, oh my God. Wow. That was
Classic.
crazy. Classic, yes. Oh, yeah, just classic stuff. So we'll back up before training. What happened? Why did you say, oh, I'm gonna get into wrestling? What was that moment?
I can pinpoint the exact moment. Sting and the NWA and Dusty Rhodes and WCW as a whole, with the Arn Andersons and the Dean Malenkos and the different characters you had throughout WCW's tenure, and as originally kind of in tandem with the NWA, the Jeff Jarrett's and the like, that made me love wrestling. And it was a nostalgic thing with my grandparents too. But what made me want to become a wrestler was a local independent show that was, it made me want to become a wrestler because it made it seem plausible and fun and that I could perform. It was in Tallahassee, and forgive me, but I forget the name of the promotion, but it's not really important. But there were a couple of guys on that show, actually four different guys. The A gentleman by the name, he used to go by the name of Mr. Pump Your Brakes, and then Morgan Davis III. They were known as the PS Playas as a tag team, and then there was another team of a couple of guys. They were the Circle of Disrespect, the Kings of Florida, Simon Says, and the late Francisco Chiazzo. And Simon Says and Frankie made such an impression on me that they were performing at a very high level for a local audience. Like they were giving their their storylines and their passion for this business in front of a local audience. And I was like, man, you know, this is this is where it's possible. And these guys, whether whether you go for just a local audience, a regional audience, or a national, international audience, it doesn't matter. You give everything you have to your fans, and that's what they did. And it was there that night, almost. It was a decade and a half ago. It was 15 years ago at least that I saw them, and they put on an amazing show, and that made me want to become a professional wrestler. Seeing those guys have so much fun, great chemistry, and good stories, and you know,
Yeah, you
it
name
it,
some top players in
it
that league.
changed my mind on whether or not I could or should do that.
Absolutely. You name some top names in the Indies, in Florida, especially with Francis Chiazzo, and that was it's a sad loss that So it's sad to see him go. I had him
He
on an
was
interview. I had him on an interview, and like a month later, he passed away, and I'm like, dang, you know, just to meet, he was so genuine. When I interviewed him, he was all gangster. You know, he came across in his character, and I was like, oh dang, I thought I pissed him off because I said his name. I said I goofed up his name, and he goes, leaned into the camera, and he goes, it's not, it's Chiazzo. I'm like, oh shit, sorry, you know. And about 10 minutes later, he let
that
me
was
go. He let me sweat. He goes, hey, dude, he goes, let's pause the interview. He goes, you're good, man. You're good. Relax. So I'm like, okay, thanks.
that's
So
Frankie. Yeah,
yeah,
that was
man.
Frankie. He was intense, but he was boy, he was a force, and he gave back. His ultimate legacy will be that he gave back and trained a lot of young guys. And you know, I never got formally trained with him. He helped me enhance my matches and do tell better stories and do different things because he would tell me, because I would ask for his advice, and he would say you should tweak this. He's like, what you're doing is good, but you should also maybe add this or take this out or whatever. Kind of some solid advice for somebody who'd only been at the time had only been in the business for just a couple of years, and he'd been in for 20. So I think he's a great character, and he had a lot of fun. He did a lot, and I encourage everybody listening to watch his film that he made, Journeyman. Um, it's fantastic, and it's really real. It shows a lot of the struggles of a traveling independent wrestler, just trying to keep the road alive, so to speak, trying to keep that dream alive. And he did. I think his lasting legacy will be in his students because he gave back to the business by giving them the business.
So how many years you been in the business?
It has been 6 now.
Okay, yeah, awesome.
So
So
I'm still kind of new, but I also, it's all relative, right?
yeah, so I'm taking this question out of the context, but I want to ask this question because I think it's very valuable for listeners. How important is it for you, say the Cheese or any other wrestler, Cha Cha Charlie or anybody out there, to listen to the legends in their locker room or pick their brain? How important is that to you, to propelling you to the top?
No, it's interesting. I just made a post about this. I don't know if it just thinking about being on your podcast kind of inspired me. Partly is because I've been able to chat with Simon Says a little bit more recently. But I made a post earlier this evening on my personal Facebook page, basically encouraging newer wrestlers to, and I include myself in that because, like I said, the age and being young is relative, but I encourage younger wrestlers to seek out the independent veterans that are on the scene. And, I'm not saying that every single one dispenses the perfect advice, but you can also learn what not to do from certain guys. And you can, but more than often than not, if you know somebody who's been in the business 10, 15, 20 years and they're still kicking it, they have some things to say to you that are going to be valuable for you. So I think it is important. And I especially look, we all have watched the bigger products that are now, went from local access TV to cable to now streaming services. And that's the stuff, that's the gateway drug that gets us into this life of wrestling. But I would encourage more than anything, for the younger guys in the locker room, is seek out the veterans in your area and learn about their body of work, learn about their accomplishments, learn about their mistakes, their flaws, learn about the things that they have done that have made the business a better place. And I'm not saying to emulate that necessarily. Emulate the things that they've been successful on, and the the truth and positivity that they brought to the business. And then maybe, and the good ones will tell you, learn from my mistakes. They will say, don't do what I did here, do what I did over there, or do what I did going into this with this mindset. So I think it's a missed, it's the ultimate missed opportunity to not seek out those veterans, those good minds of the business. And not, I tell people, and I said this in my post, I say start in your area because that's where it's most easily accessible. Find the closest independent wrestling show you can, buy a ticket, and support the entire roster, and study and see what's going on. And then from there, because we all have these phones, we all have these laptops, these whatever tablets.
Yep.
Take that technology. Can you imagine back in the early 90s, the late 80s, early 90s, having the ability to say, hey, I want to know, what independent shows or what local wrestling shows are running in Waterloo, Iowa, while I'm here in Tallahassee, Florida.
Right.
Hey, I want to know, who's running in Boston, Massachusetts right now. What are their local heroes? You know how I did that? I looked at PWI, I looked at the Aftermags, and I learned the names of certain people who were working these different federations all around the country in the 90s.
Wow.
And that was like a drug to me. And I'm not
Yeah.
glorify drug use, but it was an obsession.
Yeah.
And it was so hard to get that information. And a lot of times those names, I couldn't put a face to the name because they just had the results, right?
Right.
Now you can look up anybody doing anything, and it's the best time to be a professional wrestling fan or an aspiring professional wrestler or a
Right.
newer professional wrestler, because you have the opportunity to change the game. And it starts with talking to those veterans in the locker room and gleaning whatever you can from them, but coming from a respectful place.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. What do you consider your biggest match or moment of your wrestling career so far?
Oh, wow. I would say a very special, I want to say two. Can I do two?
Sure.
A very special, two very special moments, but in contrasted. One was when I rode, and I continue to go around with him. I actually just got a phone with him before the interview. I was able to work with Bushwhacker Luke.
Really?
And we were the Cheese Whackers for a night as a tag team.
All right. All right.
But that, I don't know if you'll ever find that footage. There were a couple things that happened during that match that were a little weird and wonky, and he didn't want it to go out there. Not on our part, but on the opposing side, one of the opposing side's part. But that's neither here nor there. But I got to, that dude started with the history of wrestling. He's like, or his own history of wrestling. He's like, mate, we start in the 1950s. You see, in the 50s, this guy ran the territory. You know, he just
Yeah.
rattled it off like over the course of several days that we were riding together. It was so cool and interesting and prolific, and you know, he's become a friend. That's been an amazing moment, and he continues to make me laugh and amaze me. But a really, really good full circle moment is my best friend Logan and I, Logan Cruz. If you're looking at the Florida scene, check out Logan Cruz, part of the
Okay.
Gifted as a faction. I would encourage you to talk to him and anybody to look up his work, because the fact that that kid doesn't have a contract blows my mind every day, because he's an athlete, he's a promo machine, he's got charisma, he's got intensity, he's fantastic. He's a 10 out of 10 as far as I'm concerned. But he and I every year run this charity show called Hope for the Holidays, and we run it in December, and it directly benefits this local charity called the Christmas Toy Shop. And the Christmas Toy Shop is where families can go and that are in need, and they can pick out toys for their kids to have a good solid Christmas, you know, free of charge. And so we raise money for that every year, and we have increased the sum of donations and money that we have done for them every year. And this past year was our 4th year. Next year will be our 5th year. But during last year's Hope for the Holidays, 2 years ago, because we've already had this one, but 2023 Hope for the Holidays, Jay Lethal asked to wrestle me. And I mean, what a huge honor to be able to.
Right.
I had the ability to train with this guy. I was like, I didn't think I'd ever have a match with him, but I did, and I won.
No
I
way.
won
That's
the
awesome, man.
match, and that it's not a lot of getting in the ring and winning matches against Jay Lethal on the independent scene for sure. But
Right.
it was really like the one of the ultimate tests, you know, and he had that, for him to have that faith in me. And we put on a great match, put on a great show, and it was I would say that that's been one of my biggest ones. You know, there's a lot of things that I could say, but
Right.
those two things are very, very special to me.
All right. So I'm gonna have to look up Logan Cruz and send him a message, and maybe he
Please
can come on
do.
the show. Maybe he can
I'll send
come
you
on
his
the show,
info.
and so hopefully he can come on the show and share his story. That'd be awesome, man. But see, the Huge
Yeah.
Pop Wrestling Podcast, I can tell you, I started the platform to talk wrestling with my brother at first, and then it turned into, hell, I can give it indie wrestling. I went to my first indie wrestling show 2.5 years ago in Panama City Beach at XIW Extreme Impact Wrestling.
Wow.
I fell in love with that. I mean, we had Jackson Slade, Damian Wayne, Wardell Walker,
Bordell, yeah.
Elvis Shaddix, all those guys, you know, and they were just beating the tar out of each other, putting on some solid, man. You felt like you were part of the event, you know. And that's
Right.
when I fell in love with indie wrestling. So I was like, you know what? I can give a platform for the indie wrestlers. And that's one of my things I like to do. So give people the platform. I mean, you guys are big enough where, you know, but I still want to give you guys the platform to share your story. So I'll definitely look him up.
Please do.
So
Yeah, he's great.
There was a match that your NWA debut against Mike Orlando. Can you talk about that? The friendship with Mike, that match, or can't you talk about that match?
Yeah, it was so we had it was a triple threat. It was myself, Mando, and a guy called Bison, who's a deaf wrestler. He's totally completely deaf, and he's he's a freak of an athlete. He's a great athlete, and he's been wrestling for quite a long time, and he's good dude. Um, but yeah, it was. What I'd like to say about that match is that it was a little bit too short. It was cut off, and they tried to some of the producers. I laugh about it now, but I was not happy at the time. But some of the producers tried to stop me from throwing cheese, and I was
Ah,
like, "That I can't. That's my whole gimmick. I throw
right.
cheese out to the crowd. I throw cheese at my opponents." And they're like, "Well, we record, X amount of episodes, and we don't want any of the cheese to be in a frame or somewhere where we're going to be doing an episode, several months from now." And I was like, and to this guy's credit, this guy, one of the NWA wrestlers called Brian Idol, he fought for me and he made sure that I was able to throw my cheese.
Okay.
And so I was able to throw the cheese, and we did that. That one was not televised. That one's somewhere buried on YouTube on the internet. And
Okay.
the commentator, one of the main commentators, I won't mention his name, but it's easy to figure out. But he didn't have so many nice things to say about our match, and didn't have any much nice to say about me being the cheese. But I didn't care, it was, as far as, I'm not trying to sound ungrateful. I was glad to have the opportunity, but I sold a lot of tickets for that show
Yeah.
because that's Sarasota. That's about an hour down the road for me, and I got a really good, solid, amazing fan base in Sarasota. And they showed up in droves. I mean, I had their family showed up, a lot of people showed up, and then they ended up putting me first in a dark match. And it's like, all right, cool guys, that's great. But what happened is after my match, we had the match with Mike Orlando. Mike Orlando won. And Mike Orlando is a good guy, and we ended up being tag partners, and ended up in the Crockett Cup after that.
Okay.
But after the match, people get night, and it was annoying to the point where Billy Corgan couldn't ignore it, and he picked up a piece of cheese and he kind of flops it around in front of the crowd, and the crowd just went berserk. And then after the match, a lot of people, like quite a bit of the crowd, left, and the ones that were still there, a lot of them that were still there, were chanting cheese. So a lot of people were like, "Oh, you're gonna make some people upset with this." I'm like, "What did I do? I just came in and did my thing and was me.
Right.
I didn't do anything other than be the cheese."
Right.
So it was a good learning experience. Let's say it
Okay.
like that.
All right. So now you're down in South Florida. You wrestle with quite a few organizations down in Florida. Am I right?
Yeah, yeah.
So I got a
Um,
flyer. I'm sorry.
yeah, that's that. Yeah, hey, that's this weekend. That's
This
Thunder
weekend.
Championship Wrestling and Nerd Street Wrestling. We're at this. It's at the Central Florida Comic Con.
Okay. Now, do you have any idea who you're wrestling there?
I don't know yet, but what I know is that there is a battle royal called the Nerd Street Cup, and
Okay.
I am going to be a participant in the Nerd Street Cup. Now, if there's another situation that happens, because Bushwhacker Luke is also going to be there,
Okay.
something else may happen. I don't know, but
Okay.
I would encourage anybody within the sound of my voice that can make it out to Lakeland this Saturday to go check that one out, because it's going to be an awesome show. I mean, Danhausen is going to be there. Who knows what he's doing?
Right.
One of my other trainers, the Technical Alchemist, David Mercury, he'll also be there.
Okay.
You got Milo Beasley, you got Boots, a
Okay.
lot of Florida names that are going to be on this. Noah Vale is going to be there. They're awesome.
Okay.
It's going to be fantastic. I can't tell you how important that show is going to be for,
Okay.
wrestling in general.
Awesome, man. And now we're gonna move into fans and what fans mean to wrestlers. Um, and there's how do you feel when you come through the curtain and the fans are going nuts with cheese, cheese, cheese? I seen it at River City WrestleCon. I will say you and one other guy, and I don't name the name drop, but Cha Cha Charlie. If I had to say two people that had the crowd just going, was you two. So, what is it? How does it feel when you can hear as you walk through those curtains your name, the chants? What's that make you feel?
Well, real quick, Cha Cha is an amazing performer, amazing athlete, and I recently had the opportunity to work with Cha Cha in St. Petersburg for Coastal Championship Wrestling.
Yep.
Shout out to CCW. We had a fun time at that show, and that match either does or will live somewhere on YouTube. So I would encourage you to go check it out. We had a really fun match, but he does rile up the crowd. We're kind of, a lot of people say that we're kind of de facto the big fun over baby faces in Florida.
Okay.
And we wear that with pride. Charlie's a good guy. But yeah, what it really boils down to for me is that I will never stop being a fan of pro wrestling. And I treat those fans how I would want my favorite wrestlers whenever I was coming up to treat me. And I do, and I follow through with that, especially the kids, because the kids are, if you want a fan for life, treat a kid the way that you would want to be treated, like gold, if you were a kid at a wrestling show.
Okay.
I've been in the business long enough where there have been kids, kids that have preteens become teenagers, and kids actually come up and join and become wrestlers and all that sort of stuff that they've watched me, and that is, for such a short time I've packed a lot into this whole wrestling game. And I think that without the fans, you have absolutely zero, zilch, nada, nothing. If you don't feel that energy from those fans and give it back to them as much as you can, and if you do that, then they give it back to you tenfold. When I hear people chanting cheese, if somebody recognizes me in Target, or I see, some kid who comes up to me after a trivia night or a show or an event I'm doing at the public library or whatever, and they have a piece of cheese that they've held on to for a year, and they want me to sign it because they're like, you gave this to me 2 years ago, and then there's a parent behind them just like, yeah, and we've had to keep it in the refrigerator ever since. So there's I love stories like that, and love I love broadening and strengthening connections with family.
Yeah.
This as being a foster parent, being a parent,
Yeah.
period.
Yeah.
There is nothing more important than the safety and the health and well-being of that child. And part of the well-being is making them feel like they matter.
That's right.
And so if a crowd of people are going to make me feel like I matter and go cheese, 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 I'm going to give my heart, my soul, my spirit back to them every time I see them. And I'm not asking for receipts. I'm not asking for anything in return. I just want to be part of them, and I want them to be part of me. That's how it makes me feel.
Yeah. Awesome. That was probably one of the best answers to that question. Honestly, I mean, I get all the basic answer is, fans are important. They, whatever. And but that I think so. I thank you for that. I really do, because you are right. These kids want to feel important. They go out of their way to make you feel important. So I'm glad I'm so excited to hear that you give back. That's just so amazing. What's your signature move?
I have several. I've got my own moves of doom, like the great one, John Cena. He's not the great one. The Rock's the great one. Sorry. He's you can't see him OG, but I would say I'll give you I've got a finisher, which is the DD cheese, which is essentially a scorpion death drop. And I just yell, DD cheese. And then I hit my opponent with a piece of cheese on the chest and they go down. And then there's the tilt-a-wheel of cheese, which is a tilt-a-whirl backbreaker.
Okay.
So a tilted wheel of cheese. And then I have the cheese boards, which is double splash in each corner.
Okay.
And then I have the pasteurization process, which is comes after the cheese boards.
Okay.
And yeah, I mean, I also have something I've been doing, lately is the lethal cheese, which is partially named by Jay Lethal, and it talks about how lethal the cheese is. I palm strike, pow, with a piece of cheese, and the cheese goes flying, and it's an amazing visual.
Okay.
But another one I've used recently is the Leaning Tower of Cheesa.
All right. Yeah.
As
Take that from
appropriated
the Goofy movie.
from the Goofy movie,
Yeah.
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 Which is a standing vertical suplex, and we hold it, and then when we start to lean, I say, "It's the Leaning Tower of Cheesa." Boom.
Nice. I have to throw this up here. This Joshua Witt has been on the show. He's been listening for the last 47 minutes. So he has this to say. He went into detail with that, and that's a good thing. And like he said, the kids and the fans are important. If it wasn't for them, the wrestling world would not be here. So
That's right, Joshua. I appreciate the kind response. I mean, wrestling, it's really difficult because, in a lines blurred sense, wrestling to me is not difficult. It's the most beloved and most natural thing that I've ever done. But the fans, that's what makes me feel genuine. That's what makes me feel, the stuff that I just told you about how I feel about the fans and giving back
yeah.
is not coming out of my back pocket. It's coming straight from here and straight from here, so it's really important to me. When I see guys that don't give enough attention to their fans, it breaks my heart because, not everybody is going to be fan of cheese. Some people are lactose intolerant. I get it. No problem. But if you've got somebody that's looking up to you, especially a small child or a teenager or another adult, if they're looking up to you, you owe them. You owe that opportunity for interaction. So I appreciate Josh's comment. That was, that's just truly how I feel, and I could talk about it for days because I honestly, that's not a character thing. That is just truly what's in my heart.
Yeah, absolutely. So where can people get your merchandise?
So you can go to, I have the obligatory Pro Wrestling Tees shop that people will buy stuff off of there. It's prowrestlingtees.com. If you search for The Cheese, I'm on there. There's the other way is through a website called Devoted Brand, which is my good buddy and business partner, Michael Devoted, aka Michael Biller. He's a tattoo artist, and he is an artist in general, and he does some phenomenal pieces, and he does the most amazing shirts. So devotedbrand.com, you can get them
Okay.
there. I have several shirts up, but the best way, my favorite way, is when people come and buy them at the shows that I'm at. If I'm at a show or a con or I'm doing a public meet and greet or something, I love it when people come to those because then I get to interact with you. I get to talk. I can sign your shirt right there. I can sign the 8x10, trading cards, all that kind of stuff. So those are the ways you can get them.
Awesome. So what about your heroes in the business other than Sting?
Other than Sting, I mean, so I've very clearly borrowed from Sting's moves.
Correct.
Movement, the way that I the ring is also, just naturally Dusty Rhodes-esque. Dusty Rhodes taught me so much without ever having been able to have the opportunity to meet the man. He taught me so much more about being a character and in wrestling and entertainment and promo and everything. He was a master of that, and it, he gave so much to me just by being the American dream. So Dusty is another big influence, but he's like definitely he's up there with Sting. He's like number two.
Okay. So, what is the toughest part of what you do as a professional wrestler that most fans like myself may not even know that you do, that you go through?
You mean like in the ring or outside, just
Just
like hard in general surrounding the
yeah,
business?
yeah, surrounding the business. Yeah.
It's the sacrifice that I make from not always being around my family. I take as much time as I possibly can to be with them, but that's the hardest part, and that's the part that nobody talks about or nobody knows about, is when you're chasing that dream and you have this incessant need to entertain people and spread around as much love as you possibly can. uh there are late nights where I get home and my daughter's already in bed and I don't get to see her that day, or my wife's in bed, I don't get to see her that day, or you know it and then sometimes my I'll go to a local wrestling show and I make hundreds less than what I could be making for if I were to be doing my business. So there's sometimes a financial sacrifice, and sometimes it's a lot of times it's more of the personal sacrifice. Nobody hears about that, and I'm not trying to give a boo-hoo story or anything like that. I'm not saying
Right.
woe is me, because I'm happy, I'm living my dream. But
Right.
like I said earlier, you do have to tread lightly, and family is the most important thing. But there is a balance that is you have to work on it every single day.
Absolutely. So, is the cheese ever want to turn heel? Do you like being? Have you ever been a heel? Do you like being a heel, or are you just face?
Well, when I started training, I was like, I didn't think, like I said, I didn't start out thinking I was going to be the cheese, but in training, I, I've given heel promos and been a heel and all that kind of stuff. And, uh, I don't, I don't foresee a world where I would be happy being a bad guy, just because so many kids look up to me and have fun with the character. And of course, it's easy to go, oh, he's stinky cheese. He's expired cheese. I mean, it's all right there.
Right. Yeah.
But um, I'm happy with being the cheese as it stands now, as a baby face, as we call it in the business.
Okay. So, is there any hidden talent or hobby that you might have that the fans might not know about?
Now, that's a good question. Um, I would say you talked about it up front, but I would say, as a host and wrestling is entertainment, period. But as a host, like an event host and a entertainer, I also host trivia. That's It's just kind of an extension of the cheese, but not a lot of people know that I do the trivia, because you can't be throwing cheese at people when you're asking them questions.
Right, right.
But it also like it lends itself that my character lends itself because my character is me, amped up, goofball. But I would say being an entertainer in general, even the stuff that I do outside of the Savannah Bananas. When Savannah Bananas wanted me to come in, they said, we want the cheese. We don't want, anything else. You don't have to stop being yourself. We want the cheese. So as a manana, I extend that as a hype man for the Savannah Bananas. And so I do a lot of stuff like that. Um, I have my interests are really, really varied. I do a lot of different things. So I can't really pinpoint one thing other than being able to branch out in this persona and do a lot of fun stuff and interact with
Yeah.
people in different ways.
Well, the Savannah Banana thing has to be pretty cool. I see commercials about those guys.
Amazing.
They seem like amazing people. I saved this for last because I think this is pretty cool. PWA End of the Year Awards, and I found this, and man, End of the Year Awards, The Cheese 2024 Breakout Star of the Year. The choice was simple. They say the moment Cheese walked through the PWA curtain for the first time, the crowd went wild. We can't wait to see what he'll accomplish in 2025. So the reason why I share this is say congratulations. And to ask the question, where does the cheese go from here? What's 2025 look like for the cheese?
Well, it's a good question. In years past, I always think like, when I finally broke through and got something with the NWA, I was like, okay, how am I going to top this? And I had my other match with Jay Lethal. Oh, how am I going to top this? When I was able to tag team with Shark Boy, how am I going to top this? Bushwhacker Luke, how am I going to top this? And I just keep topping it, and not topping it in the sense of one thing's more important than the other, but you know what I'm saying. That big things keep coming. I had my deal with the Rays. I now have this deal with Savannah Bananas. The Bananas, just an exquisite force of nature is the best way to describe it. And my first event there, the biggest show I ever wrestled in front of, and a lot of people don't say this because they don't want to seem small, but I'm an independent pro wrestler. But the biggest crowd I ever wrestled in front of was 1,000 people. And when we went to Clemson, South Carolina, in their baseball stadium with the Bananas, it was over 5,000, and that's a small thing for them because they sold out Raymond James Stadium here in Tampa, and that's like 50,000+ people that are going to be there. Same thing for Miami, same thing for Fenway, all these different national parks. So what I'm looking forward to in that is, at Clemson, I signed so many autographs. I had to shorten my name from the cheese to just CHZ cheese, like that, because I signed so many autographs. And I think I don't want to be cocky or arrogant or whatever about it, but I think this is going to broaden my name recognition. My hope here, what I'd like to do next is achieve a lot of personal goals. I'm going to be achieving a lot of professional goals with the Bananas. And, like just for example, this weekend, I've never worked at this Central Florida Comic Con. I've never worked for Nerd Street Pro Wrestling or Thunder Championship Wrestling. I think those are two really cool things. I'm checking some really big boxes there. So my plan is to, and I've already reached that goal right there, is to do, or half the goal is to do 2 different conventions that I haven't done before.
Okay.
Increase brand recognition and introduce a few more folks to the cheese through the bananas and through other means. And, hopefully, do something, more and keep branching out with the character and just continue to grow our Hope for the Holidays charity. And, where I go next is where the cheese goes. I throw the cheese, I chase after, pick up the cheese, and I throw it further, and I just keep going and keep going after it.
There you go.
So I go where the cheese goes.
All right. So I want to say thank you to the cheese. Thank you for coming on the show. I'm going to play a song to exit out here. Please don't go anywhere. Don't log off. I know but I want to ask you a few questions off camera. So,
Sure.
ladies and gentlemen of Huge Pop Wrestling Podcast, you need to go check out The Cheese. Check out his Facebook page, The Cheese. Every promotion he's wrestling in, what he's doing behind the scenes, everything like that. He's just a normal dude living his dream. And I thank you for coming on the show. I thank you for sharing your career, your dream, your hopes, your thoughts. You're a genuine dude. I appreciate you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Huge Pop Wrestling Podcast. Thank you for coming in tonight. Thank you for coming in on the Tuesday night show, throughout the week. And tune in tomorrow as we have the living legend, Larry Sabisco, coming on the show.
Wow.
So come in tomorrow, watch it, join the chat. Thank you guys for joining the chat. Also, what's that?
Cheese stick.
Cheese stick. As we close the show, the cheese is eating a cheese stick. Get that, So I appreciate you guys. As we say always, Huge Pop Wrestling is for life.